Who would end up on the Iron Throne? That was the question from the very beginning. We have seen it change hands many times. Most of the people who sat in it were incredibly corrupt, exerting their influence by stepping on others to climb higher, killing their enemies to assert their power. The throne itself a symbol of this brutal conquest, fashioned out of the swords of fallen enemies, a perfect representation of the type of people who sat upon it. We watched as they committed atrocities for the sake of retaining their power, killing the innocent and bringing hardship on the already overburdened, caring about only themselves. These leaders, the ones who were meant to be keeping justice, were the very ones creating the most injustice. And we repeatedly see it come crashing down around them. Their injustice brought vengeance upon themselves by those they hurt. Those who live by the sword truly do die by the sword. And by the end of the story, we really see the futility of it all the war and madness and chaos. The only path forward is one that breaks the cycle of violence.
We've had enough war. Thousands of you, thousands of them. You know how it ends. We need to find a better way.
Who will break the cycle? This is a common theme in the biblical storyline. We repeatedly see a world filled with injustice and hope that someone would come and make things right. When Israel is in slavery in Egypt, or in captivity in Babylon, or when they have spiraled down in violence and corruption in the book of Judges, we see a suffering people existing without a leader or under the hand of a corrupt one, and each time we're left longing for a good king to come. The Old Testament gives us many examples of leaders and kings who rise up, but we see all of them fail at one point or another, and the cycle of injustice continues. Who will break this cycle? Jesus comes onto the scene and is portrayed as the King, God Himself, who has come to make things right. And where we might expect a king to come and establish his kingdom and bring peace by conquering his enemies through violence, we see something surprising with Jesus. His kingdom is explicitly a contrast to the kingdoms of the world as we know them. Where other kingdoms are established through shows of power and inherently seek the best for themselves and their tribe at the expense of others, the prime characteristic of Jesus' kingdom is humility and seeks to elevate and serve others, especially the poor and the outsider. Jesus' kingdom stands as a beacon of light against the kingdoms of the world. His message and his way shamed the corrupt men who were in power, and they conspired to have him silenced. On trial, as he stands before the Roman governor, Jesus says, "My kingdom is not like the kingdoms of this world. If it was, you would see my servants fighting to prevent this." His kingdom is not one that succeeds through violence or power as we know it. Through Jesus' whole life, he has exemplified what it looks like to live as a part of this new kingdom, and he calls us to do the same. He elevates the broken people of the world, gives second chances and new lives to people who have seriously messed up, and his way is not a way of violence and power, but one of self-giving love and service. Because Jesus is being portrayed as a king, we expect him to take his throne at the climax of the story, but instead, he heads to the cross. He becomes king in a way we can hardly fathom. Instead of a crown of gold, he is given a crown of thorns. Instead of being elevated to a throne, he is lifted up on a cross. His death is his enthronement. Self-giving love is the only weapon he wields. God came as king to conquer the evil and injustice of the world, to make things right. And the Bible does talk about him conquering these things, but he does so by being conquered by them. What seems like defeat is really victory. The cross, a symbol of death, becomes a symbol of life. And the imagery is totally backwards from what we would normally expect, which is exactly how Game of Thrones ended its run. The whole time we have been waiting for a good king to sit on the Iron Throne, but that never happens. Instead, this symbol of violence and war is destroyed, And the new king is enthroned on a wheelchair, a symbol of brokenness. And he is to inspire the broken people of Westeros with the message that good can prevail. The lowly can rise again from the ashes of injustice. The one character with virtually no blood on his hands will hopefully break the cycle of violence in this land and bring about a time of peace. The chaos and violence in Game of Thrones has resonated with us as viewers because sometimes it seemed to so accurately describe the injustices we can see in the real world. Seeing this injustice should always have us seeking to break the cycle of violence through self-giving love and longing for the reign of the good king.